Well, Brian, it was a dramatic day in the end. Everton beating Bournemouth by a goal to nil to save themselves and to stay in the Premier League for 69 consecutive season. Unfortunately, Leicester City and Leeds United go down with Southampton. Maybe just a quick word on those two clubs. I don't think there was many people maybe predicting Leicester City will go down. Leeds United did look like a little bit of a mess from the start of the season, and perhaps no surprise that they do go down to the Championship.
Well, in fairness to Leeds United, like they're only up. This is only their second season up, and they had a bit of a scramble to survive last year. Jesse Marsh came in and saved the day for them after Bielsa was having a bad season last season. The club were having a bad season, not playing Bielsa, fabulous manager for them, but they've struggled this season. I mean, the teams that went down deserve to go down. That's the end of it. It's not like anyone was particularly unlucky. Leeds' form in the last 10 games has been very poor, scrambled a few draws, but wins were very scarce for them. Leicester are more of a surprise in that Leeds took in Sam Allardyce. He probably came in too late with four matches to go. But Leicester are more of a surprise given their recent success. They won the league 2016, won the cup since then, and they've been chasing the top four position in recent seasons. Just got edged out of the top four in the last couple of seasons. So you look at Leicester, everyone is half baffled. You're going, what happened actually? But it seems that some financial issues caught up with them, and there's been lack of investment in the team this year. Only Foyce was signed as a centre-half in the summer. A lot of injury problems. Maddison had a very mixed season. Johnny Evans was missing for a lot of the season. Soyuncu lost form. And again, they can have no complaint at the end. It wasn't because of today that they were relegated. They just have conceded too many goals over the season and didn't fire some of the signings they made before the previous season haven't worked out. The likes of Samari, Daka, they haven't really worked. Some of the defensive players they signed. So there's a rebuild to be done at Leicester, but it can be a harsh time for people at the club because there'll be jobs lost. Obviously, players will be put out of the club. I'd say there'll be players, I would say, discarded. If they can get fees for them, they'll take them. But they'll have to cut back on the wage bill because I think they have one of the highest wage bills in the league, Leicester. Although they're a club that we wouldn't associate them being with the traditional top six, they have quite a high wage bill. So obviously they're going to have to cut that now seriously. But
and it's quite a downfall when you consider they've only won the title, 7 seasons ago.
Yeah, it's remarkable, really. But you wonder did Brendan Rodgers stay around too long himself? I think he saw. I wouldn't say he saw the writing on the wall, but I think he saw in the summer that it was going to be a tough season when he saw. I remember him saying last year that the team needed an overhaul, and they didn't really get that overhaul in the summer. And but it comes down ultimately to the players. They didn't do it. They weren't consistent enough, and they conceded too many goals. The managers get too much. They get too much praise when it's going well. They get too much criticism when it's not going so well. Brendan Rodgers did a fabulous job for Leicester in recent seasons. Ranieri did a great job when he was there. When they surprised, he won the league. Brendan Rodgers won the cup and had them in contention for the top four. A couple of seasons, finishing fifth. And then he's gone this season. If he'd stayed on, would Brendan Rodgers have kept him up? Who knows? We can't really answer that. But it was a bit of a mess after that when they put the two goalkeeping coaches in charge for a while, and then they put in Dean Smith late on trying to pull it out of the bag, but it was too little too late. And there was the whole one around, Vardy not being in the team, not getting started, Iheanacho playing, Iheanacho taking that position for a while, Maddison left out of the team, in and out of the team. It certainly seemed like some of the players didn't perform on a consistent basis, and it just slipped away from Leicester. It'd be a very interesting one to do the investigation on that in the future. How did Leicester go from where they were winning the league, as you said, 7 seasons ago, to getting relegated this season? It's but you would never really have considered Leicester, despite the fact they were there and thereabouts in recent seasons for the Champions League place. You could never say, oh well, they're one of the big clubs now and they're always going to be there. It just shows you that threat of relegation is always around there for the majority of the clubs. There's been very, very few clubs who have never been relegated. So that threat, and it's such a serious thing, you know, they lose so much money. It's such a restart has to be made at a club after relegation. It has, the consequences for so many people are so severe.
Well, Everton don't have to deal with that, thankfully for their supporters. But they certainly went through the mill this season, didn't they? It did look like at times that it did eventually look they were going to go down after last season, having to wait till the penultimate game to save themselves. Here we are the last day, like in 1998, they got a draw against Coventry back then. Today it's a 1-0 win against Bournemouth, and it wasn't exactly a vintage performance from Everton. It was just really, they had to plough away there, and they got a good goal in the end.
Yeah, they got dug in. They dug in well. I think they played it sensibly. I always thought the appointment of Sean Dyche was a very good appointment. He did a great job at Burnley over the year. I saw the results of some scientific survey or investigation analysis during the week, and it said based on money, Burnley had been the best performing team over the last 10 years, right? Based on spending and based on resources, Burnley were the best. So that's remarkable when you think about it, because we've thought about it, about Burnley staying in the league and Sean Dyche being the manager and not being very progressive in the way they played. But when you analyse it like that, in terms of spending and resources and everything around the game,
salaries and that kind of thing.
Salaries to pay for players and spending on players and income from transfers. It is really remarkable. So he did a great job to keep them up for so long. Eventually he fell out of favour with the newest owners and was gone. And they're coming back this year. But I thought his appointment with Everton, I thought he's a guy that would suit Everton. And I think he's done a good job. It's been come down to the last day. The point last week was very important. It was the win at Brighton a couple of weeks ago was a really, really vital win. It looked at that stage like they were slipping away. That was their only win in 10 before today. So they've had 2 wins in the last 11 games. But importantly, they pulled out a couple of draws along the way. They got a very good draw with Spurs one night, I remember. They pulled out a couple of important draws, added to those couple of wins that made it. That was just enough for them. And they dug deep with the injury situation. You look at Seamus Coleman, because Patterson got injured early in the season, Seamus Coleman got back into the team. Obviously such a major personality around the club and a driving force for the team and many of the players. Obviously all the managers rate him highly because of his conduct. And then they lose Seamus, and then Patterson comes back in and plays very well, and he gets injured. Mikalenko on the other side, who had who performed fairly steadily, he gets injured then as well. And there's so many problems with those positions. Apart from also Andres Townsend, Tom Davies, I think there's a few more. It was really
Calvert-Lewin then as well, of course.
Well, Calvert-Lewin has been very injury prone over the last few seasons. But when he got back this time, you knew that they'd been wrapping him in cotton wool and trying to make sure if he got this back this time he was going to be there at the end. But that didn't work out for them either. And goals have been a big problem for them this season. Lowest scorers, only 15 home goals for today. That's 16. Top scorer McNeil with 7, and nobody else. Demarai Gray was the next highest scorer with 4. Decore got himself up onto 4, I think, with the 2 goals against Brighton. But that's been a massive problem for them for a good few years now. They've bought plenty of fellas and none of them have done the job, and they're still waiting on Calvert-Lewin to come back and have a good season. So it's a chance for them to restart, to reset and to plan.
And then the thing about that, Brian, is in retrospect, I kind of felt at the time myself that hanging on to Frank Lampard after he saved him was a mistake. and they got rid of him halfway through the season. Would it be a mistake now, do you think, to hang on to Sean Dyche? Do they need to think a little bit further ahead? Because there was reports in the papers last week on Merseyside that they were looking for another manager. Now, whether that was succession planning for when Dyche goes, because no manager stays forever, was put to him at the training ground on Friday, and he kind of just fobbed it off a bit like, well, look, all clubs do this. So what would your thinking be on that? Do they stick with Dyche now or go for someone else?
Well, there's a lot of madness goes on around clubs now with the ownership of clubs, and fellas coming in, Billy Big Boots, think they know everything, and they think they know how to do it because they've been successful in business. They think they know how to do it in a football club, and they don't listen to football people. The clearest example of that was Chelsea this year in particular, but it's happened at other clubs as well, where fellas come in, take over and think they know how to do it. It's been a problem at Everton for years. A lot of bad signings, a lot of appointments that haven't worked out for them, and directors of football that haven't worked out for them. I think Everton need a bit of stability. I think Sean Dyche would give them that stability, but I don't know what these people are thinking. I think the fact that he got them through it and they survived. I think if you look at his work in the past with Burnley, and look, he
qualified for Europe as well. Actually,
he did. He did great work with Burnley. But going with the factors I mentioned to you earlier, they've never been able to spend money at Burnley. They've never been able to hold on to top players if they had top players. I mean, Burnley sold Dwight McNeil, it's ironic, to Everton. Tarkowski's another former player that Burnley would have probably liked to keep hold of. So he developed some players, but I think he'd have bigger resources at Everton. But Everton are also under a bit of pressure. There's a financial investigation going into Everton as well in relation to financial fair play. We don't know where they are in that. I think their losses are about 417 million in the last 4 years.
To take legal action against them as well.
Exactly.
On the good side, though, there is talk that there's this company coming in with looking for a 25% stake in Everton Football Club. That company is MPL. Sorry, I forgot the MSP Sports Capital, looking for a 25% stake. And then you look at the Bramley-Moore Dock, the stadium is going to be built there. They move in there after next season. So there are some things you kind of look maybe optimistic about, but then as you mentioned in these investigations, we don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, but the first thing they needed to do was stay in the division, because the consequence of going out of the Premier League today was probably a reduction in their finances of about 100 million. I'm throwing that figure based on what Steve Parish said in relation to Crystal Palace, that they'd lose about 100 million by getting relegated. So if you say that Everton be along the same lines, it's a massive amount of money. Now, they, at least by staying in the league, they can do some planning. The first plan has to be, how do we stay in the league again? Because that's the second season in a row they've been fourth last. So you've got to, and you need good decision making. You need a level-headed manager who knows how to work the resources you have and to make wise decisions in the transfer market. And they've got that opportunity now. I mean, the stadium and the attraction of going to a new stadium. We were discussing early on how much we love going to Goodison Park. It's such an iconic stadium. It's an old-style stadium. There's still a few of them around. There's not many of them. But, they need the new stadium, need to be able to generate more income. And there's a massive passion for Everton Football Club. There is a potential for them to generate more income. But they need stability in the short term. And I don't know what will go on with Sean Dyche, whether he'll think, I did okay for them, they don't really want me, I'll get another job, I'll move on, or whether they'll say, oh well, he's done all right, he got us across the line with half the team out injured, no options for full backs, a young midfield player playing right wing back, and our top goal scorer playing left wing back, and he got us there. Give him a 3-year contract. Let's have a bit of long term planning at Everton. Let's plan for 2 years' time when we do get to the new stadium. But let's make sure we're in the Premier League comfortably next year by having a good steady season, rather than scrambling around in the last match again, trying to get a heroic goal like the Corey got today to keep them up.
Yeah, he certainly has made himself an Everton hero for life, I think. Just wanted to ask you about two clubs finally, Brian. Man City and Aston Villa. We go with Aston Villa first. They finished 7th. They've qualified for the Europa Conference League. Unai Emery, what a job he's done. And I tell you one thing, you wouldn't bet against him winning a European trophy next season. He's won the Europa League 3 times. Is that something maybe Aston Villa could be looking at now for next season, do you think?
Well, he has done a remarkable job. There's plenty of managers this year who have done remarkable jobs. He is certainly one of them. They were struggling under Stephen Gerrard. Obviously, the club were getting worried that they were drifting down the table a bit towards the relegation zone. It's a big worry now for clubs is to stay out of talk about relegation, never mind be in the relegation zone. So they made an early decision and moved Stephen Gerrard on. Unai Emery came in, rebuilt his reputation in Spain after his time at Arsenal. I always thought he was hard done by Arsenal. Whoever followed Wenger was always going to be a tough a tough ask and a tough job. But he did a brilliant job with Villarreal. And as you said, he previously done a brilliant job with Sevilla. But to win the Europa League with Villarreal and beat Manchester United was a superb job. I've a big admirers his. They play great football. He gets the maximum from his players. They look like they're in good shape as a club. And Aston Villa are a club with huge tradition, previous European Cup winners. So they are in good shape. And I'm sure they will have money to spend this year. He'll be able to look at the market now and say, from his knowledge of the Spanish game, probably pick up a couple of, let's say, relatively cheap, good players, because he's been good at that. So all compliments to him and his players. They've had a really good season and finished, above some of the more featured clubs with the bigger monies, the like of Spurs, the likes of Chelsea, finishing further down the table than Aston Villa.
Well, finally then on Manchester City, Brian, they're the champions. They're now going for a treble. First up, well, Manchester United in an FA Cup final. I don't think many people could say that they think United will stop them, but you never know in a cup final match. And then it's Inter in the Champions League final. Can either of those clubs, do you think, stop Manchester City from winning a treble? Because it does seem a lot of people are kind of saying the treble is done. It's on when you hear some of the talk around it.
It's not that so.
There's
not
still
so
2 matches to go, isn't there?
That's not so easy. Manchester United, obviously early in the season, they got a hiding at Manchester City, beaten up, got out lucky at 6-3, I think. But they turned that around, and the improvement was remarkable under Ten Hag over the season. I think they have a chance in the final. They'll obviously want to do it. They've used a lot of the same players repeatedly. There hasn't been a massive depth in the squad at Manchester United. You say, well, all the players are fresh. The best players have played an awful lot of games, and you wonder, have they a little bit left in the tank for this big game? Whereas the Manchester City's, although they have, Pep has been very clever in his use of players, and I would think a lot of players have been kept fresh. I didn't see the lineup actually today, but I'm sure that there's a lot of players kept. Just as we saw the last midweek game, they only used 1 or 2 as what I'd call his best 11. So they will come into that match fresh against Manchester United. But on the day in the cup final, Manchester United have quality. It's not a Wigan versus Manchester City situation. It's Manchester United, a derby match with the quality they have. I give Manchester United a better chance of beating Manchester City than I would give Inter. I don't think Inter have enough. They'll be strong and compact and breaking hard from midfield, and Zeko will want to put one over on his old club, I'm sure. Lautaro Martinez, a threat in the front position. They've got good players in the midfield, got strong defenders. The wing backs are very good players. The Marco on the left hand side and Fries on the right. I can see Inter making it awkward for them, but I think City will beat them. But I think Manchester United have a bit of a chance. So
the treble is not done yet, Brian.
No, it's not done. And I don't think Manchester City supporters in their heart believe it's going to be easy against Manchester United. I think the impression they have is we'll be able to be Inter handy enough. But with the history of Italian teams, I don't think it'll be that easy, but I think Manchester City will win the final in Istanbul.
Thanks very much, Brian. Great season. A couple of more exciting games still to go.
For sure.